Hi guys, Dave Edwards with Welcome Home Properties. I help people sell homes. I help people buy homes. One of the issues that I encounter as a realtor most frequently is something that's very sensitive to address when you walk into a home or when you're talking to somebody on how to prepare their home, and that is odor. How do you tell somebody that their house doesn't smell as good as they might think it does? We are dog owners out there, and we have odors we may not even be aware of. We cook certain foods. We may not be aware of those spices that we leave on the walls and our cabinets and things of this nature. But toward that end, I thought it might be more appropriate not to hear from me, but to hear from an expert. So I'd like to introduce John Alexander with the Stop Restoration Service Team. I've known John for a long time. I trust him. I have referred him to my clients. John, welcome to our new show.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I have got some questions, so let me kick some things off here. So let's talk about the big ones. There are four odors that I wrote down in preparation for today's conversation. Number one would be pets. Dogs, cats, litter boxes, dander or urine related. And the next one would be foods, spicy foods. I love spicy foods, but spicy foods also love to cling to walls and cabinets, as you know, and sometimes you get used to that. A third one was moisture related, mold, mildew. I see those or I smell those a lot in basements, behind laundry areas, things of that nature.
Sure.
And then the toughest one is that of smoke, cigarette smoke specifically. So in your experience, when you go into these, what are the top ones that you see most commonly? Let's start with the most common odors that you have to address.
Well, one thing I would like to say as a bedrock principle of odor control is to remove the source. So in the case of pets, if there has been like part of the carpeting that has been, used by your animals for, urination or feces, that portion of the carpet has to be removed. It's just, that's the number one numero uno principle of odor control is remove the source. So once the source is removed, then we can kind of stand back and look at it or smell at it actually, from a standpoint of, okay, how much have we reduced the odor right there? And basically odor control comes down to two principles in that there's porous surfaces and non-porous surfaces. Mm-hmm. Odors get into the porous surfaces like textiles, like furniture, carpet, things like that. We have various methodologies that can basically change the molecular structure of odors so that we alter the smell to where it comes, is not offensive anymore. And also when it comes to like, food, inside the kitchen, what we see a lot is in the kitchen cabinetry. Again, it's typically made of wood, sealed in paint. It has to be cleaned thoroughly. And one of the biggest culprits in the kitchen for odors is the backsplash behind the stove. That has to be thoroughly cleaned, and all the countertops. And, people think, well, how can the countertop on the other side of the room affect the odor in the kitchen? Well, it certainly can, because those molecules of odor can travel. They can travel by somebody just walking by and the vacuum of the air created by them as they walk by.
I think of the story of my sister when she moved into, I think it was their first house.
Mm-hmm.
This was up in Maryland, and they came in and had to wash the kitchen not once, not twice, but 3 different times. And every time they washed the cabinets, it was just buckets, literally, of grease coming off of the cabinets and the backsplash, et cetera.
Right, exactly. And that's not uncommon, we also run into like the mold and mildew smell, and we've had a number of people say, well, I used vinegar, I wiped it and it went away. That's not true. You didn't take away the mold. Vinegar takes away the pigment or the color of mold, but it still stays there, so, you've just discolored the mold. And mold, if it's in drywall, if it's in flooring, things like that, it has to be removed. And it has to be removed professionally so that you don't contaminate the rest of the house as this process is going on. At Stop Restoration, we create, a containment area, negative air, remove the materials that are inside the the containment area and get them outside of the house. Depending on how much mold it is, we might have to have an industrial hygienist come out. It varies from county to county how many square feet of mold. Typically in Mecklenburg County, it's 10 square feet or more that you have to have an industrial hygienist come out, do air quality sampling and touch samplings, or tape samples, and that's sent off to a laboratory, sent back to us, and gives us us a breakdown of what various kinds of mold. And there's over 3,000 species of mold in the world, and so it breaks down what they are, how strong they are, and what needs to be done to get them out of there.
You can get some tough situations.
Yes.
So for most of the common issues that we run into where the odor is relatively mild, I want to start talking about the tough smoke situation I had, but usually it's dog odors. I guess maybe a simple one, relatively speaking, to eliminate. Dog left a very bad odor in the house, and obviously that owner, I think, wasn't as cleanly as you and I might be with our homes.
Sure.
So you could actually see the dirt on the side of the wall. So that was one of the issues we had. But in that situation, had that owner of the home wanted to clean that and eliminate or mask those odors, what could they have done? What are the simple things that a homeowner can do to begin to probably mask I guess, as you might call it?
Yeah, in a situation like that, there's a couple of variables there. One, how severe is it? And two, how long has it been there? If it's set into the pores of the drywall, that's going to be a tough clean. Even using, some people, again, vinegar is a very popular alternative. In a situation like that, we can go in, assess the situation, clean it as best we can, and then if there's still a smell there, and we can seal the drywall or the floor or something like that, and then the odor is captured. So that's an alternative to that instead of going more expensive routes.
Yeah, I think we ended up trying to use the plugins.
Yeah,
to the point where it masked so bad that it was an odor unto itself.
Yeah,
there's only so much vanilla one can take in the nostril.
Yep, exactly.
And then just clean the walls, clean the floor is what I asked him to do, and it helped to some extent, but it never eliminated it. That's for darn sure.
Well, even professional restoration companies like mine, we enter into an odor control situation with the understanding that it will not be gone 100%. That is just impossible unless you just basically remove the items from the home, whether it's carpeting, flooring, walls, where the area is, has been the most affected. So,
and sometimes it's a simple task of just simply cleaning the litter box.
Right. Yeah. We've been in houses that had like 4 or 5 cats, and they had 2 or 3 litter boxes. And it's my understanding that you're supposed to have a litter box per cat, and didn't have the ratios right there. So the cat boxes that were there needed to be changed badly. And the litter box themselves were stained a lot. And, even changing them out, changing litter is better, but it's not going to fix it.
A cat lover, cat owner, somebody with a litter box, obviously they may not have the option to remove the cat or the litter box. So my guidance is always out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
But if it's not out of the nose, it's not out of mind.
Right.
So A, clean the litter box, and B, put it in a place that isn't seen, maybe in a closet, and get the cat accustomed to having that door open, and so they can enter and exit from that.
That's
space.
a good idea. Yeah.
And that usually remedies the situation there. All right, let's go to the 2 toughest ones in order. We're going to go to moisture, mold, and mildew are the 2 culprits. I've seen it behind wash machines. I've seen it down in basements. Obviously, where there's water, standing water in the drywall or on the floor, problem is created. But there is, I don't know what you would call it, maybe superficial surface area mold.
Yeah.
Can that be eliminated easily? Is there an easy remedy to that?
Yeah, we have, there are some various mold removal products that you can get at like Lowe's and Home Depot and things like that. if it is still on the surface, it has not gotten into the paint or into the pores of the drywall, you can typically wipe that away, you know, and, you know, you'll see that a lot around HVAC vents. You know, some people mistake it for dirt, which sometimes it is. And, but if it is mold, then, you know, we recommend to the homeowner, the client, you know, buyer, seller, whomever, to have their HVAC system looked at because it could not be functioning properly, because in my world, mold can happen if the temperature gets above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. There's 60% or greater relative, or greater than 60% relative humidity in the area. It's dark, which it is, like under cabinets, behind walls, and things like that. And there has to be a fuel, anything, you know, organic materials like drywall, wood floors, things like that. Mold can grow at 72 hours, and that's all it takes. So, you know, when people have water damage and they're like, I ain't gonna worry about it, it's just a little spot underneath the sink or something like that. Well, you might want to have somebody look at that because, you know, you just blowing it off or, you know, going after it with a shop vac, you've done a good effort, but it will not remedy the situation down the road. You will have mold.
There is a mold in particular that strikes fear in the hearts of realtors and anybody else out there. Black, spiky, and it is a disclosure issue also for realtors. What is that called, and how do you deal with it?
Well, I believe the one you're referring to is called cladosporium, and it is by far the most aggressive and the most dangerous type of mold that you can have inside the home. And in a situation like that, it has to be removed. There is no way to kill it. And so taking out drywall, taking out floors, framing, if the framing of the house is involved, we clean it. We clean it multiple times. We use various, commercial grade, we call them agents, and then we seal the wood. So we deprive it of oxygen, so it can't grow anymore.
One of the houses I went into, townhome, literally had mold up to my eyeballs in a lower basement, and I felt very uncomfortable going down in that space. That was the worst I've ever seen. So this is when you guys walk in your spacesuits, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
With our respirators on, gloves, bunny suits, shoe covers, things like that. Yeah, OSHA has numerous guidelines about what has to be done and when it should be done and how it should be done. So, we are also certified by the IICRC, which is the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. They're kind of like they write all of our guidelines, rules, and regulations that we have to abide by. And, in a known mold situation, we have to take all the precautionary measures for our employees to keep them safe.
Yeah.
And also keep the spores from spreading out to the rest of the house. We go to great lengths for that.
Okay, my favorite, the most common that I run into, cigarette smoke. I've had some successes where I put, I called it what did I call it, an ozonator?
Ozonator? It's called an ionization.
And so I ran that for 2 or 3 days, and it was remarkably improved.
Yes.
The worst case, I ran that for 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it was not improved. It might have been a little less than that.
Yeah.
But before we put it on the market, and we painted the ceilings, walls, removed the drapes, cleaned the carpet. Still, we did not eliminate the odor.
Sure. But you greatly improved it.
We sold the house, but I will tell you it was a surprise in the end because I had the windows open for an open house.
Okay.
And during that time, a realtor showed the property. Obviously, the odor was dramatically gone or reduced. She made an offer, closed on it. I had the privilege of bringing her, the buyer, back to the house. I don't represent her. And because the house had been closed again, the odor was back.
Came back, yeah.
And so I showed her everything that had been done to remediate the odor, and what was left, which was the only thing that was left for us, as far as we knew, was to clean out the HVAC system.
Good choice.
And so I did have a quote for her there, but it was a little disappointing for her, and I felt terrible in that circumstance. But that's a good example, maybe a dramatic example, but real life of the odor not going away.
Right. Right.
So how do you guys tackle that?
Well, in something like that, we have various methodologies at our disposal. Typically, depending if there's, hopefully the home is empty of furniture when we can go in, because if there's like furniture, a lot of textiles inside the house, that makes the task that much more difficult. But if we can catch it in between, the two possessions, when the house is still empty, it's much easier to deal with. We can use, an ozonator or, ion chamber. And, that creates a gas that, again, alters the molecular structure of the smell. So it's not offensive. If that doesn't work, then we have various, basically, we create a large gas or a vapor inside the home. And, when we do something like that, the house cannot be occupied for 24 hours. Wow. So no pets, no plants, no humans, anything that's even remotely living cannot be in the house for 24 hours. And we've had excellent success with that, and, we basically take two mixtures, put them together. And again, we're in our bunny suits and respirators and all that good stuff, because when this stuff starts going, it starts going quick. And we use air movers to circulate it throughout the house so that, we don't have to put a bucket of this stuff in every room. We can strategically place the bucket and then use air movers to circulate it throughout the house. We've had real good luck with that.
It's a lot more involved than people realize to get rid of these odors.
Yeah. The study of odors is called osmic. And, it's basically using, visual and olfactory, your smell. Those are the two best ways of finding any kind of things like mold, mildew, is that musty smell. Everyone's had mold on their bread, and you opened up the bag and it smelled yuck, musty. That's exactly what mold smells like when it's on your drywall or your floors or in your crawl space even.
Well, and I remind anybody who's listening to this that as strong and as dramatic as some of these things are that we just talked about, they can be very subtle too. A good example is I literally was showing property, and one of my clients stopped as if she'd walked into a wall of glass when she entered the house. And she said, "There's a cat here." And I couldn't smell a thing. Nobody else could smell a thing. But she could smell it. She could sense it. And of course, she had an allergy to cat dander, I guess it is.
Okay.
And so it can be very, we may not be able to detect it as owners of the cat, as agents, as realtors. We may not detect it, but there are some people out there who can absolutely detect it.
Sure. Everyone's different, and some people have a greater sense of smell.
Yeah.
And especially, when they're allergic to like pet dander or something like pet hair, their sensitivity is even more elevated. That's why they're, have an allergy to it. And we've had clients in the past that, they sent us in there and we're trying to smell it also. And we're like, okay, we need your help.
Yeah.
Is there a particular room that it's more, you have more of an odor or smell? And they're like, yeah, well, maybe. And I was like, okay, now we're on maybe. That it's over here in this bedroom. We go in there and we're like, you can just catch just a tiny, tiny tinge of it. And it's like, okay, I think I can smell something, and I'm like taking it as deep a breath through my nose as I absolutely can. And, close the door, shut off the ceiling fan. And then we sat there for, or we didn't sit, but, 15, 20 minutes. There it was. So you had a good point when you said about opening windows and things like that, and ceiling fans, to circulate that odor, thin it out.
It just disperses it, but it doesn't get rid of it.
Right.
That's the important thing.
Right.
Well, I think that's a good summary of the top 4, but as everybody knows, there's a whole myriad of other sources of smell. We wrote down fireplace and sewage, and water sometimes has an odor, but we're not going to cover those. We just wanted to cover the big 4 today.
Sure.
And John, thank you for that. Guys, if you're listening to this, make sure you write down Stop Restoration, Mr. John Alexander, and we'll have his contact information at the end of this video, as well as mine. And so if we can help address that, maybe identify some resources that we can bring to the table, it may be simply replacing some carpet, or it may involve bringing in more serious consideration on how to eliminate the odor. And now you have a good resource that you can turn to, and we'd love to help you, both John and myself.